Hello and welcome everyone to this week's episode of the podcast. This week we have a special treat. We have the wonderful Matt Hopkins here with us today. He is from a company called the Great Brand Exchange, and they do lots of amazing things. So they help small brands such as jewelry businesses, but it could be other businesses as well, get exposure and sales through selling through the high street. They have some pretty impressive figures. They facilitated more than £50 million in retail sales for small brands. So they kind of have been doing this for a little while. They also have an amazing network of small brands and businesses. They've got over 12,000 in their network. So we're going to be talking a little bit about that, I'm sure. Finding out about how people can get involved. They've managed more than 5,000 in-store pop-up shops, and they've worked with companies like John Lewis, Waitrose, Harrods, Selfridges, the list kind of goes on. So very exciting to get their perspective and see how small brands can find some of these things a bit more accessible, because I think it can be quite daunting when you're kind of working from home and have no idea how to even talk to these people, but would love to reach some of their audience. So Matt, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Yes, absolutely. I'm excited to learn more. So before we get into talking about like the pop-ups and the Great Brand Exchange and all of that, I'd love to know a little bit more about you. So how did you come to be doing this work? Why is it important for you that small brands can kind of have access to these bigger high street accessible stores?
Well, it's interesting. It was like everything, it's got a story to it, hasn't it? So my background prior to this was in licensed branding. So we worked extensively with some fairly well-known high street brands, worked for a long time with people like Jamie Oliver and Laura Ashley, and helping those brands develop a product portfolio for an international retail sector. And actually, the reason that we kind of got to this place was off the back of the previous recession. I really started to see a trend in what we now refer to as localism. So it was a kind of off the back of the last recession where jam making kits come back into fashion, men grow beards, knitwear comes back in, that kind of stuff. There was a real kind of heart to nostalgic buying methods. And so what we started to see was that sort of trend and particularly around British made stuff. There was a lot of that kind of going on. And I was actually sat in Jamie Oliver's garden talking about barbecue, as one does. And we both got quite excited about this idea that I'd kind of had about creating a British made range of products. And it was quite difficult because we'd already sort of just established Jamie's brand at quite a mass market level. So it was around that time where you saw Jamie Oliver stuff everywhere. So actually then I took a small team of buyers off around the UK looking for manufacturers that were able and willing to produce products for us for our range, so pots and pans, knives and forks, all the kind of usual stuff you'd expect. But whilst I was on that journey, we met loads of really, really cool, really innovative and creative small businesses who were all seemingly had the same battle. So we were going to lots of sort of small trade shows and just traveling around and meeting people and connecting. And this sort of thread was becoming more and more apparent that the retailers were looking and wanted the newness and the innovation and the variety that the small brands gave, but the small brands couldn't get to those buyers either because they couldn't afford to go to the trade shows. They didn't have the confidence. They weren't commercially minded people necessarily, and often quite creative, who were all making these great products. And actually, when you looked at their sort of distribution, it on a map, it was all kind of within an hour's drive of where they lived or were making stuff. So, which kind of makes sense, but it was kind of making that next leap. So I then had this kind of idea to create a hub essentially become a conduit for and hoover up the small brands and help them get into and get visible to the bigger retailers, which hopefully we do now. So, and that was nearly 10 years ago. So we're approaching our 10th anniversary of setting that business up. So that's how it started.
Yeah, well done. Well, it sounds really important. And I think, we all see these people on Dragon's Den who are like, I've got this product, but I just need to get it into the major retailers. And there's a lot of, kind of hurdles and things that you just don't know, because how would you know if you're not in that industry? And a lot of small business owners, it's a second career and they've done something totally different before. And now they're making something or have a passion for something, but the distribution, like you said, is a whole different skill, I think, an area to learn. So it sounds like you guys really help people with that. So tell us about the Great Brand Exchange now, because there's a few different kind of services and things that you offer, aren't there? You kind of work with the retailers and work with the small businesses. How does it work kind of today?
So today we've established a network of retail contacts, of which in terms of major retailers, there's probably in terms of contacts, we've probably got about 400 current buyers and people of influence within those retailers, and those are, like you mentioned earlier, Harvey Nichols, John Lewis, Boots, Waitrose, etc., etc. And we've amassed a network of it's just over about 12,500 brands now, and that's cross category. So that's everything from jewellery to fashion, accessories to food and drink, and sort of everything in between, really. So that's growing, and we at the moment, and we are developing new ways of working all the time. There are the three main routes or models that we offer. One is that, and the newest, we'll start in reverse order, with a directory called Found. Sorry. Directory called Found Here. So we've been asked by the retail community to help provide a simple and easy and visible directory of where they can just access brands. And on that directory, each brand has its own profile page. So a little bit, we talked about Dragon's Den, it's a little bit like a virtual sales pitch. So it does have the bio of the brand, who they are, critically their story, which is very, very important, some images of their products, and they actually can upload a video on there of them pitching and introducing their brand. And we email out to those, the buyers, of which there are, as I say, about 400 major retail buyers, and then there's about 23,000 independent shops and outlets that we're also connected with. So we're just amassing that network all the time. So that's Found Here. Then we also have a specially developed wholesale distribution model, which we've developed over the last 9 years. And that is really designed specifically to service and bring in small brands into a warehouse, pick, pack, consolidate with other small brands, and ship in to the major retailers, so that they don't get lost. But critically, for the retailer's point of view, they're only dealing with one source. So often one of the barriers to entry was the retailers don't want to have to set up lots and lots and lots of small brands because they have a threshold, and if they don't hit that threshold, then obviously it's quite prohibitive for them. But actually bringing it all through one makes an awful lot of sense. So we have a wholesale distribution model, which we can talk about a little bit more, and then we have a pop-up shops. So actually we probably do now about 2,000 pop-ups a year in major retailers. So John Lewis is our biggest and longest standing partnership. And we enjoy tremendous success with those guys in terms of bringing new brands to market. So the profile of a pop-up shop is typically, and not exclusively, a brand would go in for a week at a time. They would bring their stock in, they man their stand. All the payments are managed by us. All the payments go through our payment device. And then we create a report on a daily and weekly basis, which gets uploaded to all the buyers so they can see not only what's being sold by a SKU on where, but also if you go onto our Instagram page, you'll see lots of examples of how the brands merchandise amazingly and how they engage with the consumers, etc. So that's massive. So the brands see that, and obviously then it's a brilliant platform for the buyers to go, we really like that, we like the look of that, and often we see brands go on and have relationships either through us or directly with the retailers. So those are the three models that we have, but there are other things that are coming, which I'm quite excited.
That wasn't enough. You needed some more
Yeah,
products.
exactly.
Brilliant. Well, I mean, it sounds amazing. I have questions about all of them. I guess before we get into like each model in detail, I'd be interesting to hear what do you think the benefit is for small businesses of working with these bigger brands? And also what's the benefit, I guess, of the bigger brands for working with the small businesses? Because your business brings them all together. And I imagine sometimes it's a bit scary as a small business owner that you think, I could just stick in my little bubble where I'm used to everything and everything's an hour away. What is the benefit of kind of branching out and really kind of going for these, kind of more high street names?
It's really interesting because it's pretty much the first question now that we ask both the retailers and the brands, in terms of what their aspirations are. And often I get invited to meetings with major retailers, and I sit down, and before I give my sales presentation as to who we are and what we do, I'm saying, like, why am I here? What is it that you think you need from the small brands as well? So I've gained quite a lot of insight from the retailer's perspective, which we can talk about. But from the small business side of things, I think it's really, really important to understand what their aspirations are. You said earlier that some of the brands, it's their, it's almost like their second job, or it's they've changed careers or that kind of thing. And if we've done lots of surveys with the small brands to try and understand what it is that they want, and often the answer is, I want to be the next Joe Malone and we want to take over the world in our category. But then interestingly, there's quite an interestingly high proportion of brands who just say, do you know what, it's just a lifestyle for me. And I think that harks back to, my passion for setting this up is actually to create, part of the reason is to set up opportunities for people to kind of follow their dreams, really, and do what they want to do. And there's I think actually probably post-COVID there's probably an increase in people saying, I don't want to go and work in a call center, or I don't want, I want to make jewelry because that's what my passion is, and I want a means of actually selling that. And that doesn't necessarily always mean going to a major high street retailer. And I think sometimes that's the holy grail, that isn't always the case. And so I think, so in terms, certainly nowadays, and increasingly more so, it's everybody knows that the consumer is savvy, and we can get product quick, and we can get it fast, and we can get it cheap, via means that we all know. But particularly from a consumer's point of view, and particularly in gifting, and this could be a self-purchase, but particularly in gifting, the provenance and the story behind the product are, I think, increasingly important. Because if I'm giving you a lovely necklace as an example, as a gift, it's nice for me to say, this was made by Jess in this, and it's one of a kind, and and this was the message behind it, and this is what it's made. And actually, rather than just being something that's picked up off a supermarket shelf and it's pre-boxed, and there's more meaning to it. So I think that the retailers recognize that there's quick, fast, and cheap, and that has a very important place. And I think that, the retailers do an amazing job of delivering us consumers competitively priced products, whether that's food and drink or jewellery or whatever it might be, in an affordable way. But I think also there is a growing market for things like localism. We talked about international localism is something that's coming more, and that doesn't necessarily mean where it's made, but it's something that might resonate with your personal values and what's important to you. So sustainability, often is something that's necessarily important to certain people. So so it's interesting, but the retailers, I think, need that point of difference. And actually what's critical that the smaller brands bring over the larger manufacturers is their ability to adapt and change quickly to trends. And actually they drive innovation, and we mentioned sustainability. It's often the smaller brands who are pioneering those innovative techniques or materials and that kind of thing. And that's what the retailers really, really want to get hold of. And obviously it creates a platform for the brands as well. Sorry, hopefully that answers the question.
Yes, it does. It's kind of like a win-win. So the retailer gets access to these kind of wonderful, innovative businesses with more creative ideas, perhaps, and the small businesses get, I guess, more sales essentially because there's a bigger audience and more exposure, and who knows kind of where that will lead. And I think it's interesting you talk about the storytelling aspect, because especially in our industry, a lot of our jewelers are handmade jewelers. So, nobody, as much as we sometimes dispute this, nobody needs to buy handmade jewelry. It's a luxury item. And so when you're making the decision to buy it, you really care about what's behind it, because that's almost the reason why you get it. So you can share those kind of stories. And I think it's interesting you were talking about one of your platforms. You can kind of upload like almost like a pitch page, like a kind of, so what would your tips be around creating that kind of pitch page and, bringing that storytelling into it? Because is that what makes the difference between being successful in terms of matching with some of these brands, or, just a bit of advice for if someone's like, yes, I can't wait to sign up to this, where could they start?
I think video content is and well executed and concise video content is sort of mission critical these days, because and where you can bring in something sort of unique and eye-catching, which is obviously quite difficult, but there's so much noise around at the moment. And if you imagine excuse me, so as an example, last week, or was it the week before, I was judging a panel at the Specialty Fine Food Show, and I invited 3 retail buyers to come with me. So there's an audience of probably, I don't know, 100, 120 people in the audience. And as we got up to leave, they were like famous celebrities. They were just inundated with people kind of running up from the audience and asking lots of questions as to how, and if you imagine and what that's like for a buyer who's just, their inbox is just, saturated. So trying to find out, what's good, what's interesting. So it's those, and they don't have time to read all the content. So if someone's sending it, don't send a buyer a War and Peace email, because they will just ignore it. They'll just delete it. But something that's personalized and concise, and that's what we try and encourage our brands to do on the directory. Excuse me, sorry.
That's found here, isn't it? The directory.
That's found here, yeah. So that's very new. That's only a couple of months old. So, but the feedback that we're getting from the buyers is short, sweet, concise, and a video, if possible, is the best thing to do.
Absolutely. It's a great opportunity, I think. And then the other area that we wanted to talk about is pop-up shops. So
great. The pop-ups are fantastic.
Yeah, so tell us a bit more about them and how a small business owner could get involved.
So the pop-ups are great for, I think, 3 main reasons. One is that if a brand's going into, say, John Lewis, the kudos of being able to say, hey, I'm in John Lewis, on their own website or on their own social pages, etc., has a kind of a short-term impact, but also has a long-term sort of afterburn effect of of that kind of kudos. So that marketing moments, those kind of marketing ability there to sort of talk about that you're in a major retailer is not to be underestimated. The second most important thing, I think, is that direct consumer interaction. So, and it's not, it doesn't often, and even if you're a big successful brand, it's not often that you actually get to stand in front of your target customer and talk to them about and get actual feedback. And we've got some amazing, in fact, we did a purge on this, a review on this the other week, looking at the testimonials that we've had about the pop-ups. And often people have gone away and redone their website, re-looked at their pricing architecture, and just to make sure that they're actually compatible and aligned. So going in and talking to the consumers. The other thing as well is lots of businesses only sell online now. So actually, you're great if you've got an Etsy page or whatever, but actually to be able to go in and stand and talk to a consumer, you're getting that feedback is really important. And then obviously the third thing is you get sales. Well, hopefully you get sales.
Yeah, absolutely. I know a couple of jewelers in our community have done the pop-up shops in John Lewis, and they've always got really good feedback. I think they've always learned a lot as well through the process in terms of like how it all works, and it's just a whole different world to some of us. And what would your advice be if someone does kind of come along to one of these pop-ups and gets in, and it's coming up perhaps in Christmas or in the next few months? What kind of things do you think make a successful pop-up?
Engage with the consumers. 101 is you must engage with the consumers. And again, we mentioned earlier about the kind of profiles of the brands that the small businesses aren't necessarily kind of commercially driven salespeople, and but actually the difference in performance that we've seen of brands who actually get up and talk to the customers passing by, because that's what they want. They don't want to be hassled, but equally they want to know. And actually, if I did a bit of secret shopping actually last Christmas, and we saw that some of the brands had created beautiful displays on their pop-up stands and then hid behind them. And
leave me alone.
Yeah, it's like, please don't talk to me, please don't talk to me. And you could see that the brands who actually got up and started talking to them about what the product was and where it came from and how it was made, and the thoughts and ideas and provenance and all that kind of stuff, they were the ones who sold 10 times more than those that, well, hid, or worse, got up and said, "Are you all right? Can I help you?" And that it was such a turn off to the consumer. They want to be engaged with, not sort of. So the engagement piece is massive, and obviously merchandising and displaying your products in an inviting way equally is part. But also one of the most I can't believe I've nearly forgot this. If you can be making something and showing how it's produced there and then, even if it's not really thoroughly making the product, but actually you're kind of tinkering. I mean, jewellery would be a fabulous example, or artists and so on. We've seen it where consumers just horseshoe around the pop-up stands because they love it, and that's the bit that also helps tell the story. When I'm giving you that necklace and I said, I met the maker at this pop-up and I got talking, and and I've done it. I have bought jewellery, and in fact I bought it from a lady up in Scotland who'd produced this beautiful necklace of the Isle of Jura. And, it happened to be that my girlfriend and I have been up recently, and it's one of her favorite places. And of course, that made an instant connection. And yeah, she loves it. So those kinds of things, it's that personalization. And personalization is also something that's trending enormously at the moment. So
I was going to ask you about that, because obviously you have this unique kind of insight into this whole world of what people are buying and what people are selling and what, the retailers want and what the consumers want. So in terms of trends at the moment, I guess, for the next year or so, you mentioned personalization. Maybe you talk more about that or any of the trends that you're seeing kind of coming up.
Well, yeah, I mean, so personalization, um, we're seeing it in everything, and again, it links back to the values, and so it's personalization of getting something with your name on it, as an example, but also things that make it unique and tailored to you and to what you like. Again, I've just recently bought a water bottle for a friend, and you could personalize the sleeve that kind of when it shows the color, and you can put a bit of text on it, and it again, it just makes it something different and unique. So personalization is massive at the moment. In fact, we're just embarking on a big project with Primark, actually. And I know some people go, "Oh, Primark," but actually, Primark is a great retailer, and they really are changing, and they want to bring a lot of diversity into their offering as well. And it depends, the target consumer. And this is the other thing we're looking to do quite a lot of is create lots of different types of opportunities for our brands. So, John Lewis consumers is a very different proposition to the Primark. But we've seen lots of actually cool little jewellery pieces that we're working quite well. There's a trend in kids' schools at the moment with shoelace charms. And I don't know, it's one of those things where my daughter's got them, and it's all the rage. But they are those kinds of things, and I mean, if you want footfall, places like Primark are immense. So yeah, that's a really big trending thing at the moment. We're seeing that, and we're getting asked for it all the time. Personalization, localism, and things that really are, and obviously, sustainability is a big one, but there's a little bit of nervousness around it at the moment with lots of brands making claims without it actually being, not correct, but embellished.
Hard sometimes to have the evidence and kind of the back. Yeah, I can see that. And are there any things, so they're all the kind of things to look for. Are there any things that would really put someone off, like that we might just not know about and not realize when you're kind of submitting pitches or applying to do a pop-up or anything like that? Are there any things that just wouldn't really work, for example, like really high price points on pieces, or I don't know, anything that sort of just isn't matched to the retail wholesale kind of industry or sector?
Yeah, I mean, things, very high price points. I mean, you're reducing the piece of pie quite considerably. Very low price points equally are also problematic. For very low price point items, it's virtually impossible to sell them online, because it just doesn't work out commercially. Equally, also very heavy items also don't work particularly well. I think researching your target customer as well, and really understanding what might work and might not work. For example, I was talking to a lady the other day who'd created a really cool range of products. I won't say what it was, but it had swear words on it, and she was hoping to get into John Lewis, and it's just like it just won't work, because you'll offend people, and that just that won't work. Even though it was quite cool and it was very, very funny in the way she's doing it, unfortunately, it just was. So just be mindful of, again, and one of the things that we always say to all of our brands is really, really the time spent researching your target consumer, and break it down to a micro level of exactly who. Create a profile. It's so and so and so and so. They're this age, that the social demographic. This is where they shop, and almost follow that trail through. Because if you get to that point, then it makes life a lot easier. And unfortunately, some of the brands that we speak to, I spoke to a lady not so long ago who created a range of essential oil products, and there was everything from an Ayurvedic arthritis curing product to a beard oil, and and it's kind of like, okay, but who are you actually aiming for? And the answer is everybody, and that's the worst answer you could possibly give. So that's got to be really clear, because again, the retail buyer will need to understand who you're aiming that product at. So I think if you can portray that, that's also really, really important.
That makes a lot of sense. We talk a lot with jewelers about having a signature style, which is a bit like having a niche or something that someone sees your jewelry immediately. They say, "Oh, I know who that is." Whether it's on Instagram or on their website or in person, they can kind of connect all of the dots, and that kind of being really specific about who your audience is and what your products are, I guess, is important.
And it will naturally evolve from there, because once the brand starts to develop, then you probably get more people interested in it. But I think having that target, and of course, we're living in a world now where, well, everything's changing all the time. And I think in terms of, in the world of retail, there's sometimes this expectation on actually both the retailer's side and the seller's side, the small business, that everything's going to go back to normal. So we're kind of, we've got through COVID, we've got through Brexit, we've got through the Ukraine war, all these kinds of things. But nothing, I think, when people really kind of understand that change is permanent, and that's what's going to happen, then and that's why it's great, because unfortunately we see a lot where brands have created really beautiful products and they've nailed it in terms of their customer, they know exactly, but unfortunately they've not done the research in terms of that retail store, and there's already a couple of brands in there that are very, very similar, and therefore the retailer's not going to bring that on, because it's just going to cannibalize the existing sales. Yeah,
makes a lot of sense. So in summary, if jewelers listening to this are thinking, great, I'd love to get involved, what can they do? They can create a profile. There's a few things they can do. Talk us through action.
So there's a number of things that they can do to get involved. First of all, if you head over to the website, so that's www.thegbexchange.com, and follow the paths in from there. You can head over to Found Here, and on Found Here you can create your profile page, and then you'll be part of that community. And that community is also a learning and resource hub. So we also hold webinars with retail buyers, but we work with Google and TikTok and various other kind of brands to help educate and teach businesses how they can, or rather we signpost where you can go and learn, like you, for example. So our partnerships and network is really important there. So you can go and create your profile on there. You can also join our network of community for pop-ups. So you can register your interest in various pop-up opportunities. But once you're within our community, we'll also communicate out opportunities that retailers have contacted us about, and that might bring you through to the wholesale side of things as well. So certainly come over to the website, and you'll be able to find out all the information about how to join and register for all of these activities there, and the things that are going to be coming soon.
Wonderful. Yes, definitely go and check it out. Why not? And we'll put the link in the show notes so that you guys have access to it as well. And my last question, you've obviously built a successful business. You've been doing it for more than 10 years. You're very passionate about what you do. What would your tip be to other business owners, perhaps starting out or even continuing on their journey? I'm putting you on the spot. It's a mean question, but
it's a really mean question.
If you had to give just one piece of advice, what would it be?
I think there's two, really. Don't give up.
You can have two, yeah.
Don't give up. because there will be times where you've got your head in your hands and you just think, it's too hard. I've gone down the road. There's always opportunities to change and pivot and try new things, but there's, tomorrow another door will open and you never know. So don't give up. But really do your research. Really do your research into, like we've just said, who is your customer? Where are they buying? How much are they paying? And of course, linked to that, excuse me, again, is make sure your pricing is targeted, is correct for that target consumer. And you've made allowance for the retailer's margins within that. Because unfortunately, we've seen it a few times where brands do quite well selling direct to consumer, but making that transition to B2B and the retailer's margin expectations, and they haven't accommodated that. And obviously then the price points get pushed up. So making sure that whole bit of research has been done. So do your research across everything, your customer, your price point, etc., and then go for it and don't give up.
Love that. Yes. Persistence is key.
It's key.
Still here a decade on. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
Well, Matt, thank you so much for coming and sharing about the Great Brand Exchange today and giving us some insight into this world. I'm sure lots of jewelers will come on over and get involved, and look forward to seeing them in your pop-ups.
Lovely. Great. Thank you so much for having me. It's been fantastic. Really honoured to be here. So that's really lovely. Thank you very much indeed.